So is it the best teams or the most deserving teams? Welcome back to the Green Beans Go playoff. It's your host, me, and we just got word that these four teams will make the college football playoff, and it sent kind of a storm across the country, leaving out Florida State, who went undefeated this year and won the ACC. Obviously, their injury to Jordan Travis is the main and actually the only reason they're not in. We will get into that and more later. I'm going to go through each of these teams, each of the top 6 teams that were in contention, plus a few others that I think should have been discussed based on some metrics that I believe are important. We're going to talk about each one. We're going to talk about why I think the committee ultimately got this wrong. So let's start with the number 1 seed, which is the Michigan Wolverines. Do I agree with this? No, but I see why it is the way that it is. They win the Big Ten. And outside of that, what did they do? This schedule is embarrassing, honestly. East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers, Nebraska, Minnesota, IU, Michigan State, Purdue. Big Ten football is not what it has been in years past. All of these teams are irrelevant and bad. Okay, they beat Penn State at Penn State by 9 points. Say what you will about that. I don't know if that's the most impressive win. They beat Maryland by a touchdown, and they beat Ohio State by 6 at home. So I'm not mad that Michigan's number 1, but I think an argument could be made that their schedule was easy and that they have not done a ton to prove anything. And I actually believe that they will lose this game to Alabama. I think they would lose this game to Washington. I think they would compete with Texas and maybe win that game. I think that would have been a toss-up. I don't believe in this Michigan team. I think they are one-dimensional. I think if Alabama comes in and says, hey, Corum, you're not running all over us, if they get down and McCarthy has to win the game, and I don't see Michigan having a shot in this one. I think they're vastly overrated, and I think they played a schedule in preparation for an Ohio State team that barely lost on the road with horrible play from Kyle McCord. So I'm okay with this. I think they should have, in a perfect world, in my opinion, with the cheating scandal, with this easy schedule, I think throwing out Michigan wouldn't have been the worst thing. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but I would not have hated them for it. I know it would have caused a big stir. So did they get Michigan right? Sure. A week ago, Washington was not even being talked about, and now they're getting slid into the second spot, which is kind of insane, but I think it's well-deserved. I think they played a tougher schedule than Michigan did. I think the Pac-12 was solid this year, and people are going to say, well, the defense, there's no defense played in the Pac-12. I don't know if I agree with that necessarily. Oregon State and Utah both have recognizable defenses. I think Oregon's defense is pretty well respected, and so they went on a 4-game win streak, beating 3 solid defenses back-to-back to almost back weeks. Oregon was a 9-point favorite, 9.5-point favorite over the Huskies, and the Huskies came in and won that game. I don't know if Texas, actually, I'm going to say it. I know for a fact Texas does not have the secondary to stop Michael Penix and all of his weapons. I think Washington being an underdog in this game against Texas is bizarre, and I think there is tremendous value on Washington. So I like the Washington pick. I think the Washington selection at 2 is probably the best thing the committee did. Okay, here it is. Texas gets in. And I think this is the biggest blunder by the committee. And I know that 90% of people watching this, 90% of the country is going to disagree with me. And here's why. They beat Alabama. Congratulations. They beat Alabama in week 2 when Alabama had nothing figured out, when Jalen Milroe was still getting used to this offense. I don't care that it happened in Tuscaloosa. I don't care about anything that happened in week 2. Looking at their schedule otherwise, what jumps off the page at me? Okay, they did lose to Oklahoma. Nobody wanted to talk about that in these last few weeks. Alabama and Texas both have 1 loss. Is Oklahoma being talked about for the college football playoffs? No. So if Texas is, and Alabama lost to Texas, Alabama's loss to Texas is not as bad as Texas's loss to Oklahoma. More recent, too, and we will talk about recency in just a little bit because all of us, all the committee wants to talk about is recency, right, with Florida State. So look at these other games, right? Kansas State, they barely beat in overtime. Kansas State was respectable this year, so nothing, that's fine. TCU, though, was not great this year. They won by 3 points. Iowa State was not good this year. They won by 10 points. They blew out Texas Tech, fine, and they handled Oklahoma State. I don't think Texas deserve the only reason Texas is in this playoff is because of a week 2 win. And I firmly and 100% utterly believe that statement. If they lose this game, Texas is not even in the conversation. If they win the Big 12 title, nobody cares. Nobody's talking about them. I think that this Texas Longhorns playoff berth is the biggest travesty of the year, and I don't think it was talked about enough. And I think it's only because they beat Alabama week 2 on September 9th, 3 months ago. And I think that is ridiculous, and I think that is an error, and it's something that nobody is discussing, and I think we need to be discussing it, and I think it's too late to discuss it. But here I am discussing it. So I say you take Texas out of the college football playoff, and you put in, well, I'll tell you in a second. The fourth and final team in the playoff is Alabama, and I think that is the right call. I think Alabama did everything they needed to do to be considered and to be inserted into the college football playoff. I don't think there was an argument that could have been made that they did not deserve it. I think they deserved it over Texas. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, you can look at head-to-head schedules. I don't care about that because Alabama's most recent games are more impressive by far than Texas's most recent games. So I do not care that in week 2, I get it, guys. I understand the logic, okay? I will sit here and I will admit that everyone in the comments of this video is going to say, Texas beat Alabama, so Texas deserves to be in. Jalen Milroe is not the same player week 2 as he is now, okay? And if we're going by that logic of it doesn't matter, they still beat him. What about Florida State, which I will talk about in just a second, so I'm still going to hold on, okay? I'm still going to hold on. You put Alabama on a neutral field against the number 1 team in college football for the SEC title, and they win. And there's still discussion about if they're going to be in the playoff, all because of their week 2 loss to Texas. Like sit here for a second and think about what that means. It is ridiculous, okay? And it is stupid, all right? So I am fine with Alabama being in. I think they should be in, and I think Texas should be out. Let's look at the 2 teams that did not make it in. My heart goes out to the Florida State Seminoles, and I think they were shafted, they were screwed, they were bent over backwards, they were spanked, chewed up, and spit out. All right, I think they were utterly disrespected, and I don't want to say ignored because obviously this was the committee's toughest decision, but they were ignored for what they were able to do. And here is why I believe this, okay? Florida and Louisville are no walks in the park, guys. And so we're going to sit here and say, well, they didn't have Jordan Travis. They don't have Jordan Travis for the playoffs, so it's not the same team. Okay, you know who else is not the same team? Alabama from week 2. But this whole playoff hinges on Alabama in week 2, right? So if we're going to say that Alabama in week 2, that game matters, then let's talk about Florida State, their game in week 2, their game in week 3, right? You can't. This is what is driving me nuts about this is we're measuring these teams with 2 different yardsticks, okay? And we're saying that a game 2 months ago matters, but all of a sudden, since they had Jordan Travis 2 months ago, they don't now, we have to leave them out. Look what this defense is able to do. All right, 6 points, 15 points, 13 points, 20 points, 7 points, 60. What are you telling this team? What are you telling the anything, everything, okay? When your quarterback goes down, give up, right? The season's over because they're not being respected. I think Florida State could have beat Michigan right now with their backup quarterback. I firmly believe that they could beat Michigan. I don't think they beat Alabama. I don't think they beat Washington. I don't think they can keep pace with Washington, even though they have a good defense. I think you should have given us a Florida State, Michigan, Alabama, Washington final. That is what I believe would have been the most fair and the most accurate. And I don't care if you want to sit here and say, well, it's the 4 best teams right now. I'll tell you one thing right now. Texas is not one of the 4 best teams in college football. Georgia is better than Texas. Ohio State is better than Texas. Florida State might be better than Texas. It is not about the best. There were too many metrics and too many moving pieces. And Florida State ultimately was a victim of that. I believe that Florida State should be, and you can see, of course, do I really want to watch that? No. Do I want to watch Florida State? No. But I don't want to punish a team for doing everything right. Your star player goes down, you rebound, and you win games, and you get punished. And I think it's ridiculous. And I think, again, it all hinges on that week 2 game because you want to put Alabama in, but you can't put Alabama in without Texas. Oh, but you can. And they chose not to. And that, I think, is ridiculous. I don't have a ton to say about Georgia. I think their schedule's pretty easy. And, Missouri's a good win. Ole Miss, Tennessee are good wins, although I don't think Tennessee was that dominant this year. Losing to Alabama obviously was the final nail in the coffin. I think it's interesting that we have such a short scope on teams where Georgia loses the SEC final and the conversation's over. Don't even talk about them anymore, right? And that's just recency, I think, because they were the best team, and now they lose one game week before, and they are no longer in the conversation, which, again, I think contradicts the Texas thing, which is so annoying to me that it's about recency, until it's not, until it's about week 2. That's what drives me nuts. So I'm okay with this decision, with Georgia not being in, but I don't know. I think they're one of the 4 best teams in the nation. So if it's about best teams, maybe they should have made it. Last thing I want to look at is Ohio State, just because I think they deserve to be in a conversation that they were not in. Their only loss came on the road against Michigan, and they lost by less than a touchdown. And if you look at all the one-loss teams' losses, Ohio State had the most excusable loss, and they were not in the conversation because it came, again, at the end of the season. So I could have seen an argument for Ohio State getting into the college football playoff if you want to talk best teams. Now, Kyle McCord, I don't think is the guy. I think he played this game horribly, and that's why they lost. And, I'm not sure that he would be able to show up on a big stage like the college football playoff. But I think that them not being considered because of the way the Big Ten is aligned and how it all played out, I think it's ridiculous and defies a little bit of logic. So I would have liked Ohio State to at least been in the conversation. So in my humble opinion, that is very probably wrong to many of you, but at least I can say I have no true bias coming in because I don't support a college football team. It would have been Michigan, I guess. It would have been Washington. It would have been Alabama, and it would have been Florida State. All right. I do not believe Texas should be in this college football playoff. I don't think they're deserving to be in this college football playoff. And I think they are in because of a week 2 game when all the committee wants to talk about now is what's relevant today. And I don't think that win is relevant today. And I think Alabama, if they should meet again, will torch them. So that is what I got for you today. This was more for me. This was cathartic for me to rant and vent and get this off my chest. Because I don't think anybody's talking about Texas. Nobody's talking about Texas. Everyone's talking about... Sorry. We'll see you next time.